It all started on an ordinary evening. The kind of evening when people hurry home from work, streetlights blink awake one by one, and families gather around dinner tables. But for one man, a quiet, worn-out single father, everything changed in just 15 seconds. Witnesses later said they couldn't believe what they saw. A group of men had surrounded a young woman in a dimly lit parking lot, their voices loud and threatening. And then, out of nowhere, this man appeared. No one knew his name. No one knew his story. All they saw was a father, carrying grocery bags in one hand and holding the hand of his little boy in the other. And in just 15 seconds, he stopped the attackers. The way he moved, the way he defended that stranger, it was like something out of a movie. But what shocked everyone wasn't the fight itself. It was the truth about who this man really was, and what he had been through to reach that moment. Daniel wasn't the type of man anyone noticed in a crowd. He lived quietly, worked long hours at a construction site, and walked his son, Ethan, to school every morning. Neighbors described him as polite, reserved, even a little too quiet. But behind that silence was a storm. Years ago, Daniel had been happily married. His wife, Claire, was the love of his life. Together they had dreamed of building a small home, raising a family, and growing old side by side. But life, as it often does, had other plans. Claire was diagnosed with an aggressive illness shortly after Ethan was born. For 2 years, Daniel fought alongside her, praying for miracles, taking her to endless hospital visits, and trying to be both father and nurse while holding onto his job. When Claire passed away, Daniel's world crumbled. He was left with a baby boy in his arms and a grief that seemed too heavy to survive. But he did survive. Not because he wanted to, but because Ethan needed him. Daniel's days became a cycle of exhaustion. Work, home, diapers, bottles, sleepless nights. He didn't complain, though the loneliness sometimes felt unbearable. What got him through were the promises he whispered to Ethan when he thought the baby was asleep. I'll protect you. Always. No matter what. But life wasn't done testing him. Money grew tight. Bills stacked up. Some days, Daniel would skip meals so Ethan could eat better. And the hardest part wasn't the hunger, it was the shame of walking past toy stores or school events, knowing he couldn't give Ethan the carefree childhood he deserved. Despite it all, Daniel never gave up. He trained himself in small ways to stay strong, both mentally and physically. Before work, he'd wake up an hour early to jog or practice old self-defense techniques he'd learned in the military years ago, a past most of his neighbors never knew about. He wasn't trying to be a hero. He just wanted to be prepared, in case his son ever needed him. That preparation came into play one fateful evening. Daniel had picked Ethan up from after-school care. They stopped by the store for groceries, milk, bread, and Ethan's favorite apples. As they walked to the car, Daniel noticed a commotion in the distance. A young woman was backing away, her voice trembling as 3 men cornered her between parked cars. One of them reached for her purse, another stepped closer, and the third laughed in a way that made Daniel's stomach twist. He glanced down at Ethan, whose wide eyes reflected both fear and confusion. In that moment, Daniel felt the weight of every promise he'd ever made to his son. Protect. Always. Stay right here, buddy, he whispered, guiding Ethan behind a nearby car. Then Daniel stepped forward. What happened next shocked everyone. The attackers barely saw him coming. In seconds, Daniel's grocery bags were on the ground, and his body moved with precision, sharp, controlled, practiced. One man lunged, but Daniel deflected him with ease. Another tried to grab him, only to be disarmed with a swift movement. The third didn't even have time to react before Daniel's stance made it clear, this fight was over. It took just 15 seconds. The men scrambled away, muttering threats they didn't mean, leaving the woman shaking but unharmed. Witnesses rushed to help her, but their eyes kept darting back to Daniel, the quiet father now holding Ethan's hand again, as though nothing extraordinary had happened. Word spread quickly. Some called him a hero. Others wanted to know who he really was. And when the truth came out that Daniel was a grieving husband, a struggling single dad, a man who had once served his country and now devoted every breath to raising his son, the story hit harder than any headline. Because Daniel's story wasn't about superhuman strength. It was about love. He didn't fight those men because he wanted glory. He fought because he wanted his son to see that standing up for what's right matters. That protecting the vulnerable matters. That courage isn't about being fearless, it's about acting despite fear. But Daniel's challenges didn't end there. After the incident, his quiet life was disrupted. Reporters knocked on his door. Neighbors suddenly treated him differently, some admiring him, others suspicious. Ethan's schoolmates whispered that his dad was some kind of action hero. Daniel had to explain to his son that being strong doesn't mean fighting, it means knowing when not to fight. It means kindness, patience, and responsibility. Still, the attention brought unexpected blessings. A local community group stepped in to support Daniel and Ethan, offering help with childcare and bills. Slowly, Daniel realized he wasn't as alone as he thought. People cared. Sometimes, all it takes is one act of courage to inspire others to kindness. Years later, Ethan would say that moment changed his life. He grew up never doubting that his father loved him, never doubting that